Hey guys, and welcome to the OT for Life podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Putt, and today we have Laura Park Figueroa on the show, and we're talking about all things business and occupational therapy. Laura runs her own pediatric private practice and is also the host of the Mind Your OT Business podcast. If you want to learn more about OT business, this episode is for you. If you're interested in occupational therapy, this is the place for you. This show aims to explore our profession by sharing who we are and what we do. Because for us, occupational therapy is more than just a job. Hi, I'm Sarah. Welcome to OT for Life. So welcome, Laura, to the show today. I am so pumped to be chatting with you. And you know what? It's for many reasons. You are one of those OTs that I just feel like you wear so many hats. And correct me if I missed something. You're currently teaching at an OT program. You're getting your PhD. Yes. You run your own private practice. And you host an OT podcast all about business. And then you just mentioned something when we were chatting earlier that there was one more thing about a dog that you're doing as well.
And the kids, but you know.
Oh, yeah, and the kids.
They don't take that much time.
and the family.
Right. And the husband, yeah. I will say I'm not teaching as much as I used to be teaching. I just pulled back a little bit from teaching, and I'm going to adjunct next fall instead of part-time. Okay. Because that's too much for anyone to do what you just listed. And so I really realized that I want to be working on my business more. And so to do that, I had to kind of take a leap of faith away from the steady paycheck. And I mean, it'll still be a relatively steady paycheck, but it's not going to have benefits and it's going to be much less income. So it put a little fire under my butt to do more in the business, which I'm loving so far. My husband's been like, oh my gosh, you are like just getting some traction here. And I'm like, yep, because I have to. So it's good. It's good to take risks in your business, but also a little scary. So,
oh yeah. And I think a little bit later on, we'll like dive into that kind of transition. Cause I have some questions about like that whole phrase of like working on your business versus working in your business and all that kind of stuff. But we'll get to that. But so I first came across you because of the OT Entrepreneur Facebook group. And honestly, I like literally was like jumping up and down when I found out that you had started a podcast. You had started an OT podcast about business because there aren't any really out there. And being that I'm in private practice myself, like I'm always looking for other resources. I'm always looking to further my knowledge and just continue to grow within that kind of that business space. And so when I found your podcast, I was like, yep. This is awesome. And this is like, it's filling such a void that we need and that we as OTs, we need.
Yeah, I'm so thankful for those words. The encouragement that I have been getting from random people who will message me through Facebook or Instagram, it's like literally keeping me going because, you know, it's the same as what I just said. Taking a risk and putting yourself out there is just very scary sometimes, especially in an online space. I think Mandy Chamberlain, when I just interviewed her, you know, she said it can be scary putting yourself out there. You don't get as much feedback, like immediate feedback, because you're not in person with all of these people who are consuming your content. And so, yeah, it was really scary, but I'm so excited about it. And it's been so encouraging to have these people from all over, like Australia and mostly Australia. There've been a lot of people from Australia, just everywhere, just contacting me and saying the same thing, like, oh my gosh, we've needed this in our profession. So it's fun. And I hope it's helpful to people. That's really the intention. Because I'm just so excited. I'm obsessed with business. I love to talk about it. So it's been fun.
Well, then it's perfect.
Yeah, totally.
That you love to talk about it and it's something that needs to be talked about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I have a question for you.
Okay.
I'm going to put you on the spot. We're starting.
That's all right.
We're starting it early. I'm putting you on the spot. Why do you think we need more OTs starting their own companies, starting their own businesses?
Oh my gosh. Can I go on about this for so long? I think that we as occupational therapists constantly undervalue what we have to offer the world. So the reason I think that more OTs need to start businesses is because when you start a business, you have to be confident that you are meeting a need that people have. And it helps you get like crystal clear about finding what that need is and meeting that need. And I think that in turn makes you more confident about the services that you offer. And so it's like twofold. I want the world to know that we are awesome at what we do and that we have something of benefit to offer clients and populations and communities and society in general, but also that it will also increase our own confidence in ourselves as a profession. So it's like overall like societal awareness of the value of OT and also us being more confident in what we offer as OTs.
I think a lot of times like OT can just go into so many different realms and so many different areas that it's not even there yet. And I think society as a whole doesn't realize the value of what we can do until we've gotten there.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times it's like, well, OT just does this or it just does this. And it like compartmentalizes what we can do as a profession until we move into that space. And they're like, this is a perfect space for an OT to be in. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, no, I agree. I knew it would be a tough question, but it's something that I feel like definitely more OTs need to get into kind of that entrepreneurial space.
Yep.
And I know that you mentioned kind of the feeling that we undervalue ourselves or maybe even society undervalues us. But why else do you think that more OTs don't go into entrepreneurship and start their own company or products?
Well, it's a confidence thing, first of all. I think we need to be teaching students too. I'm so excited. So when I pulled back a little bit, this is an aside, but I promise I'll get back to the point. When I pulled back a little bit from teaching and I told the director of our OT department that I wanted to go to adjunct, the one class that I told her I wanted to keep as my own class, I'm co-teaching the pediatrics course this fall because I've done it for many years. I love it. I love the instructor that I teach with. And then in the spring, I'm going to teach an entrepreneurship in pediatrics course. And I designed it myself. I get to like make all the content myself, but it's super practical. It's about figuring out a customer need. It's about meeting that need, looking at evidence to inform what you're going to offer in your business, setting up a website, writing marketing materials, all the stuff that you have to do to set up a business. And it's for the OTD students in the program. And I think we need more of that content in our OT programs so that we're producing graduates who have a little bit of that training so that they kind of get the bug, they get the entrepreneurial bug maybe. But, entrepreneurship is not for everyone. That's just a reality. I mean, I was just having a conversation with a friend and she said something like, I feel like being a tenured professor I'd be set. And I was like, see, to me, that sounds like a jail sentence. Like, I never cared when I was teaching about tenure, or any of that, because it's just not my personality to want this like super steady, stable thing that's always the same. I am like too many ideas. I'm too curious. I'm too much energy. Like I have that kind of entrepreneurial mindset. And I think that is something about kind of who you are as a person. But also I think that you have to give people the training and the skills so that they can find out if that's for them even. Doesn't mean that my friend wouldn't be a good entrepreneur. She's just choosing not to, but it's just interesting. So yeah, I don't know if that answered the question.
Oh, it did. It did. Okay. I want to get back to this mindset piece, but before we get there, I want to talk about the student part and really kind of, for me, it's like, it's planting the seed. And I do that with my students. I'm a fieldwork educator. And when I take students on, I am talking about my business. I'm talking about how I set it up. I'm going through these steps with them really to just plant the seed. Not all of my students are going to want to go and start their own private practice in early intervention or private practice in general. But I think at least like when I was coming out of school, I just always felt like the education was tailored to the W-2 employee traditional path.
Absolutely.
And I never really got any sort of this exposure to having a business, running a private practice. And for me, it's just really kind of opening up that awareness about business in OT.
Yes.
So then down the road, when the students are like, you know what, maybe I could do something like that, or I have this specific area that I want to get into, but it's not there. Okay, I can go design it. And so really kind of like highlighting my own path as a business owner.
Yes, I love it.
Showcase to them that it can be done and you don't have to have an MBA and all this kind of stuff in order to do it.
Right. It's so great. I thought of something while you were telling that story too, that oftentimes I think I had kind of a light bulb moment while you were talking, because I designed this entrepreneurship in pediatrics course. It's an elective. Not all the students are going to take it. So it's people who elect to take it. But I designed the course and I was like, I don't know if this is much different than what they're getting in like their marketing or their administration and management class. But I got the syllabus for the admin and management class from the instructor who teaches it, and it's fabulous. They get a little bit, but the challenge is exactly what you said, that class is set up based on the ACOT standards that are required for all OTs, and it's geared towards hospital administration. Like you're going to be a manager in this huge rehab department and you're going to have to learn how to manage people or whatever. And there's some really great, I love the instructor who teaches it at Samuel Merritt where I teach. And she is a good administrator, very good at leadership and very good at leading people. But the reality is that a lot of businesses that what I'm talking about when I say entrepreneurship, I'm talking about managing your own business and your own employees and things like that. And that's a very different thing than learning I guess it's similar, but learning the leadership skills needed to manage a rehab department. It's like you're still a W-2 employee at that point, and there's things that you can't control. In your business, you're really ultimately comes down to you, if you're running a business. And so I think that piece is just really different. And that is, while you were telling that story, I was like, oh, that's actually a perfect example of what's different about this course I'm going to teach, is that it's really your own idea, your own managing of all of the various factors that you need in your business and having to implement that. And also that it's not a traditional, I'm really big on wanting to, and I want to get more of these people on my podcast too, but on OT starting non-traditional, not just private practice. I mean, my business is a private practice. Your business is. A lot of us are running private practices. So that's always going to be like a huge segment of the OT entrepreneur pie or whatever. But we're seeing more and more OTs start, making products or designing things or making software to help people or apps or adaptive devices. I mean, there's this whole realm of OTs in business that I haven't even scratched the surface of yet that I can't wait. I mean, I will never be short on content for my podcast because it's just there's so much I want to learn from people and to share with the broader OT community to really inspire them. It goes back to that inspire people to want to go down this route.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Inspiration, and whether they do want to do like a traditional brick and mortar practice or a non-traditional, like that's up to them. But at least they have the opportunity. They have that awareness of this could be something. If I get to the point where I feel like it's something I want to do, I could do it. And
yes.
I think both of us were kind of on that same page of just kind of putting it out there and being like, hey, we're not anybody special. We had an idea. We went for it. We have been challenging ourselves and pushing through all these hurdles, but we got there. And so I always say, like, if I can do it, most other people that want to do it can do it as well.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I 100% agree with this. And I could not say it more. Like that is something I've actually been wanting to share this, like I don't know. Sometimes I think of random things and I'm like, that probably wouldn't be a whole podcast episode, maybe more an Instagram post. But, but I, like I said at the very beginning, I've been so encouraged, and I feel like what I'm learning the most in this whole process, even just recently being more present on Instagram and doing more like live video and putting my face on the business more and on both the businesses.
Which has been fantastic, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
I've enjoyed your lives.
well, I just feel it's so funny. And that's what I mean. Like you saying it's been fantastic. I'm like, I sat there with that phone in front of my face for like 10 minutes, just like changing the angle, thinking about what I was going to say. And then like finally when I do it, I'm like, well, that wasn't that scary. And that's something I want everyone to hear who's listening to this. Like usually like your own perception of how bad something's going to be is like not as bad as it actually is in real life. It's really not that scary to go on live video. It's really not that scary to put your voice on a podcast or whatever. And the thing is, people want authenticity, and you might get some criticism, and that's okay. We as business owners, we have to be able to hear constructive criticism and take it and know that it's not a reflection of who we are as a person, the same way any positive feedback is not a reflection of who you ultimately are as a person. But that putting yourself out there in an authentic way, what I've learned is it will generally be well received by people. And the world has need for whatever you listening to this are gifted to do. And so you don't have to be worried that someone else is doing something similar or, well, I'm not as well spoken as them or cute as her or whatever, like it doesn't matter. you put yourself out there and try to share something of meaning, something to help other people with the world. And in general, I have found that our OT community, at least, and the parents and families we serve tend to respond really positively to that. And it's a huge, maybe it sounds so basic, I don't know, but it was a huge realization for me, like, oh my gosh, I can actually help people by taking some risks to put myself out there, and it's well received. Instead of people thinking I'm dumb or crazy or whatever I think people are going to think about what I have to say, right? So it's my message is put yourself out there. Like it's rewarding to do so if you're really seeking to help people. It's been crazy for me to realize that.
It's like lean into the discomfort.
Yes.
Right? Like
yeah.
we grow from doing things that we're not comfortable doing. And
absolutely.
Yeah, like you will never know what you're capable of doing unless you push past where you are already at and do something that you haven't done before. And then all of a sudden you'll like turn around and like look back and be like, whoa, I'm way further along than I was. And now I'm here. But if I wouldn't have taken that first step or wouldn't have made that move into the direction that you want to go, you'd never realize where you would actually be able to end up.
I would say it's really helpful. I think it's cool when you actually write things down that you want to accomplish. Because I one of the first things that I ever posted on Instagram business wise, when I was kind of like transitioning my personal account to a more related to like the business side of Mind Your OT business coaching and stuff like that, I posted a list that a business coach I was working with several years ago had made on this huge piece, those big, they're basically like giant Post-it notes. Uh-huh. I don't even know what you call it. They have like the sticky stuff at the top. So she'd put it on the wall and she'd take notes with the marker while we were talking. There was one session we did together where she did this 5-year vision, like 5 years from now, what are you hoping for your business? And I found it when I was cleaning out my closet because I saved all those things and I had them all rolled up in the back of my closet. And I found it and pulled it out. And I was like, oh my gosh, like 80 to 90% of this stuff has happened.
Wow.
Like it was super rewarding. And it's something that I'm going to start using with coaching clients because I feel like that clarity, when you like actually write something down, when you speak it into the world, I'm not someone who's like, oh, you can manifest things, but in some ways you kind of can, but like there's something about it. It like sets your mind on those goals that you have and you write them down. And I think it just helped me be focused on where I really wanted to take my business. And it was super encouraging to find that and realize that much of what I've done over the last it was like maybe 2 or 3 years ago that we had written the list out together. Much of it had happened or like is in the process of happening. So it was just a really awesome thing that I'd recommend people to do. So even if it's just one thing in your business that you really wish would happen, like it's great for financial goals too. Like I want to hit 100K income this year, and set that out there as like an intention. And then it's going to help direct your actions towards that kind of goal that you have. But yeah, it was super fun to find it. It was all crumpled up and scribbly scratched and but
burned around the really edges, cool. Right? Like
right.
To do in
it
school.
Was all ripped. And, yeah, I took a photo and then I threw it away, which is what I should have done initially. But I wouldn't have had that awesome experience of finding it and then getting to share it with people to say like, that's the exact point is I'm not anybody special. I just feel like you get the right supports and you do the right learning and you implement actually things that will take your business forward. And then you'll look back in 2 or 3 years and be like, oh my gosh, like I didn't even realize how much I did because I was just kind of doing the next thing in front of me that needed to be done towards these goals. It's cool. So
did you like growing up and like reflecting back, did you think that you would be an entrepreneur? And I guess I asked this question because I was not that person. Never thought like that term would define me. Never thought that I'd run my own practice. Like if somebody, I always say this, like if somebody would have mentioned that when I was in OT school, like I would have just been like, like that's not me. And so did you always have this kind of entrepreneurial side? Or is there anything that kind of came up in your past that now you attribute, you're like, that's where it started?
You said that first question would stump me, but maybe this one is more of a stumper. Okay, I would start with the fact that I'm an oldest child, which pretty much defines me. Like I'm kind of type A, I'm kind of controlling, I'm kind of like an achiever. I won't say an overachiever because I'm not a perfectionist in a lot of ways. Like I don't feel like a lot of what I do is like super perfect or anything like that. But it's like typical first child kind of, I'm kind of bossy, like those kind of first child tendencies. So I guess in that respect, I'm also an Enneagram 8. Have you heard of the Enneagram?
Yes.
Or Enneagram? People say it different ways. So I'm an 8 on that, it's called a challenger, basically. So a lot of 8s are really good at entrepreneurship because you're kind of a manager and you can kind of like execute things. You can like show people a vision and execute, So there's also bad qualities, which are the ones I just said, like bossy, type A, controlling, all of that. So, so some of those things, like some of like who I am as a person, I think maybe I didn't know it when I was really young, but I think some of that was there as my personality. I think I don't know, like I got married pretty young and had kids pretty young. And so it didn't occur to me when they were really young to start a business because life was just crazy. And I was getting the experience I needed with kids to actually, wait, I lie. I did start a business. I didn't start this business, but I did start seeing kids privately when my older two were pretty young. They were like 3 and 2. So I was still working. My mindset wasn't that I was an entrepreneur at that point. It was more like I was seeing some kids on the side while I was working in the outpatient rehab at the children's hospital. So that experience, like that was where I kind of just started billing people. I had some cash pay clients and I was doing some like Medicaid billing when I lived in Florida. So I guess I did start relatively quickly. I'd maybe been an OT for like 5 years at that point. But as far as the entrepreneurial mindset of like running and growing a successful business, I would say that didn't happen until I actually had a vision for something that was super meaningful to me, that I wanted to spend every second doing, and that I felt super passionate about and wanted to be involved in all the time. I mean, in a good way. I try to be balanced, but I really could work all the time. I love my work now. Like I love everything I do related to my work. And so that's sort of where I think my entrepreneurial brain started when I started this business, not necessarily when I was just seeing some kids on the side, even though I guess that is entrepreneurship. It just, my mindset wasn't there of like, I want to grow this into something. I want this to be my full-time income. I want this to be, have a broader impact in the community. And that's not to say that all entrepreneurs have to have that broader vision. Like you are an entrepreneur if you have the mindset of an entrepreneur, that you want to provide a good service to people, that you want to speak their language and all of that. You don't have to try to grow a huge business to be an entrepreneur. But for me, I feel like that shift didn't happen until I did have that. I did have that vision of like wanting to kind of do something bigger than just me in the practice, if that makes sense. So
yeah.
I don't know. I guess maybe I think that switch for me happened when I really realized I had this dream in OT school almost 20 years ago now to do something in the outdoors with kids and OT. And then, I started in a hospital working, and then I was in school-based practice for a long time. And it was like I was working and raising a family, and there wasn't time to be like thinking about starting something new. And when I remembered that vision and actually realized that I could start doing it because I had some private kids that I was seeing, I don't know, that was when the light bulb went on for me, because it never really interested me to run a brick and mortar clinic OT practice. But for some reason, taking that out into nature made me really interested in doing that, even though it's the same thing without the building, essentially. So yeah, that was a long and convoluted answer. Sorry, but That was a hard one. That was a stumper. I was like, I don't know if I've always thought I would be an entrepreneur. That's kind of a hard question for me.
And I think it's an interesting reflection for people to have, because I didn't think that way for the longest time. But then when, again, I must have been listening to some podcasts and they were talking about like, what is it in your past that lines up with that mindset? And I was sitting there and I'm like, nothing. Like knee-jerk reaction. I was like, there's nothing in my past that would line up with that. I didn't have any business before this. And then I was like, but I always had this part of me that did my own thing. Not in a bad way of like disrespecting my parents or anything like that, but like something as simple, and this is like, it's so silly, but like I played soccer, and every year we'd get to pick our numbers, and typical soccer numbers would be between 0 and 12, maybe 13, maybe 15. Okay. Oh no, I picked number 73.
Right.
Why? Because I wanted to pick number 73. And then like my dad would joke with me about how I was like, I think it's like linebacker or whatever, like a football number. Right. And everybody else has all these numbers like under 10.
That's so funny.
And it's, but it's like little things like that I just would always kind of go.
In your own path. Yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't care what people thought about it either. And so for me, like that was how I was able to like line up. Like I like to kind of do things my way. So
I love it.
It's interesting to ask that of other entrepreneurs of like, where did it start? And like some people will start selling candy bars like on the playground at school, but others kind of have these weird things that pop up when they're young, but then evolve into that kind of entrepreneurial mindset.
Yeah, I think it's hard. I don't know that I ever had any like mentors or anyone to really see that in me and encourage it. Sometimes I again, back to that idea of encouraging students when they're in OT school, because I think if they're just exposed to the whole idea, I think it starts the wheels turning, you're right, so that they can go back to it later and say, maybe I do want to do that. Maybe I would like to run my own business or my own practice or whatever. So,
Did you face any negative feedback or kind of negative energy as you were going about this process of starting your own business?
From anyone or from a particular anyone? From anyone.
Yeah. Maybe yourself, maybe friends and family, other OTs, like the non-believers that thought that you couldn't do it.
Well, so this is related because my master's program that I did, I went back for a post-professional master's. I got a bachelor's. I finished in 99 and I finished fieldwork. I graduated in 2000, but I finished in 99. It's weird because I postponed fieldwork. And anyway, I had to walk later than I finished my fieldwork. But way, way back then, only a bachelor's was required. And so that's what I got. And then I was working in the school district here and I decided to go back and get my master's because I was getting pretty burned out. And in my master's program is when I started to have those entrepreneurial wheels turning. And my coworkers at the school district where I worked were constantly questioning me why, like when they'd heard I was going back to school, they were questioning why I would do that. Like, why do you need to go back to school? Like, what is the purpose of that or whatever? So it's not exactly the same as like questioning the entrepreneurial journey or doing your own business. But by the time the third person asked me, like, why are you even doing that? I was like, you guys, because I want to learn. Like, God forbid anyone want to like actually advance themselves. So I kind of felt like there was a little bit of pushback because anytime you do something that is outside the norm, outside just the, like doing what everybody else does, there are going to be people that question you because it makes them question what they're doing, right? And so even if you're not saying like, I think everyone should go back and get a master's, which I don't at all. Like that's not necessarily for everyone, but it was almost like because I did that, they were like, well, why are you doing that? So I'd say with the business piece, I don't know that I had anyone who was outwardly critical, but I will say that I do not feel like my close friends understand my life. Like they don't necessarily understand how much I'm obsessed with business. Like I kind of just want to talk about it all the time. I have to control myself at parties. And they're like some of my best friends in the world, but they're not my business friends. Like I have a couple of people, I want more, who are my business friends, who I can like really geek out on business stuff with and talk about what works, what doesn't, new strategies, whatever. I mean, anything related to business. And I think that is such a part of who I am now that's been a little bit hard for me to realize that my friends don't really understand my life and they don't necessarily want to know everything about my business. Like I would love to tell them, so it'd probably be a friend of mine just said to me, she was like, because one of my kids said right in front of her, like, are you going to go work on your podcast, Mom? Because like, I'm doing that a lot lately. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that today. Just, I already did it this morning or whatever. And she said, oh, you started a podcast? I was like, yeah, back in March and she was like, what's it about? And I was like, oh, OT business. So she's like, oh, so it'd be really interesting to me. Right. Like totally sarcastically, but I was like, actually, a lot of what we share on that podcast is not necessarily just for OTs. It's for everyone. I mean, I'm wanting to share it with the OT community, but I was just like, yeah, no, probably not interesting to you. but it's like, it's just that even is an example of like, your friends may not understand what you're doing, and that's okay. Like you can find your business people. I have this weird thing against the word tribe. I know it's so popular right now in marketing because of Seth Godin's work, but I don't know if I like the word. I just feel like it's overused. And so I don't know. I need a new word for tribe. But I feel like you need to find your group of people that you really resonate with and that can kind of give you that support and encouragement you need, because other people aren't necessarily going to understand your entrepreneurial journey. And that's probably okay. You know, that your best friends don't necessarily understand your entrepreneurial path. But I will say Donald Miller's podcast is wonderful. Do you listen to his Building a Story Brand? Oh, Sarah, you'll love it. Everyone, I mean, I've recommended it on my podcast too. He's an author who has written a book called Building a Story Brand. And it's basically about how to write your content on your website and in your marketing materials to really resonate with a customer by making them the hero and you're the guide to help them find the solution to their problem, basically. It is fabulous. His podcast is like one of the top business podcasts on iTunes right now, I'm sure. He interviewed someone recently, and I feel bad because I can't remember it off the top of my head. But one of the things that this guest said was that kind of that idea, I mean, every entrepreneur has heard it. You're the sum total of the top 5 people you hang around, which means I'm the sum total of a Puerto Rican man and 2 teenagers and an 8-year-old. But maybe one friend who's not an entrepreneur. But it was a huge epiphany for me because he was talking about this idea, not necessarily that idea of just the 5 people you hang around, but this idea that as entrepreneurs, we need certain kinds of people in our life to support us in our journey. And that your success is going to be related to the level of success of the people that you're associated with in your OT business journey. For us, our OT journey. So that was a little slip right there.
Yeah.
Maybe not Freudian, but but so whoever you're around the most, that's going to influence your business really significantly. And I like to think of it as kind of what I've just been talking about, those lines of like your personal and your professional life are not always one and the same, right? So your personal life, you're not necessarily going to be friends with all entrepreneurs, but I have found in this process of just growing my business lately that it is like a snowball, you know, like the more people that you meet that are running their own businesses, the more you learn from other people who are running their own businesses, the more you learn about business, the more you connect at conferences with people that are those entrepreneurial mindset kind of people, it will only bring your business further at a quicker pace than if you didn't have those people in your life. Just that idea of community being so important and having people that you want to be like when you're running your business. So you can still have your personal friends that are just there because you love them.
Yeah.
But you need those like successful entrepreneur type people in your life, which is why coaching is really, I think, important to businesses. I've used coaching a lot in my business. And I think that you get there faster when you have someone who's holding you accountable and who's seen things from the outside, you know, and saying like, let me really take an eye to your business like a customer would and tell you some things, or what's your system for when people come into your business? Like, what's your intake process like? Or I don't know, there's a million other things, but having someone who's looking at it, not with your eyes, because you're always in your business, we get so blind to the things that aren't working. It's really helpful. So it was a cool episode. I want to say his name starts with a V. I can't remember. It was one of the last few episodes that Donald Miller did. So it was great.
We'll look it up and then we can link it in the show notes. So if people want to check it out, we'll make sure that we have
totally. Okay, I'll send all it. That's a good idea because I can totally remember it. If I looked at the list of podcasts, I would remember which one it was. So it's worth a listen. I wanted to listen to it twice. It's that good. So I don't do that frequently. I don't have time for that stuff. Listening to podcasts twice.
Yeah, but
so it was good.
Yeah, there are some that you're like, hold on, like I'm gonna listen to this one, I'm gonna let it wash over me, and then I'm gonna come back because there's a lot in here, and I missed it all the first time. So many things that I want to like comment on about what you were talking about, and I think kind of like going back to the beginning when you were talking about your friends and kind of this maybe lack of understanding or just maybe lack of desire to understand. I feel like first off, at least in my experience, a lot of my friends that are outside of the OT world do not understand what we do as OTs. So we have that battle. Then secondly, we are in business within this profession that people don't understand. And here we are. What's the quote? Like you leave a job, you leave your 40-hour position to work 80 hours.
80.
Yeah.
I've heard that multiple times in the last few weeks. That's so funny you brought it up. I love it. So it's totally like, true.
Yeah, they don't understand what we do. And now all of a sudden we spend every waking minute, like we eat, breathe, sleep, everything OT in business. And they're like, I don't get it. Like it doesn't make sense. And so I think there's like that whole aspect that like to the outside world, like they don't understand it.
Yeah.
And people like, they'll look at me and be like, I had a student one time, oh my gosh. And he asked me, and I laugh because, when he asked the question, I'm like, I don't even want to answer. Like he asked me how many hours a week I work.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I don't even want to know because it's way more than it probably should be, but I love it and it's for my business. So I'm going to keep doing it.
Right.
But then I think the other thing that you brought up about kind of that importance of community, that importance of support, and then also like surrounding yourself with the people that are going to push you forward. They're going to make you better. They're going to support you through the hard things. Like I think in business, that is such a huge thing that people need. We need people that are going to stand up for us, but they're also going to go, maybe you should think about it this way. And you're like, oh, that's actually a really good thing. I hadn't thought about that, right? You get kind of locked into your own brain and you get this tunnel vision of where you're going. And so really like surrounding yourself with these people that will support you, but also challenge you to push you to be better and also to kind of get to that next level. And I think like when you were talking about the sum of the 5 people that you hang out with, like I hear that all the time too. And I sit there and I'm like, okay, well, it's going to be my husband and like all these other people.
Right.
And then I'm like, but a lot of the quote unquote people that I surround myself with are like other podcasters that I listen to all the time. And I feel like even in a digital sense, those people are they're in my realm because they are the ones that I listen to on a daily / weekly basis. And so I'm not listening to people that are like, oh, life is so hard and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, I'm listening to people that are like, go get stuff done. You want to get there.
Yes.
You gotta make it happen. You gotta put yourself out there. Like I'm listening to that. And then that is pushing me forward as well.
I have to say to everyone who listens that the OT podcasting community, I think maybe it's just that it's so small. I am so embarrassed to say this, but I'm a real person and I am like, that's my thing. I'm like super honest. And so I realized that, gosh, this is actually a really great forum for me because I really don't have anything to prove. I can just be honest. This is like the dream job I've always wanted, which I'm not getting paid for, but someday maybe I'll get paid for it.
It's a pseudo dream job at the moment.
Right. It's an unpaid volunteer job that I get paid to do and I love. But I'm embarrassed to admit that before I started the podcast, I had not listened to OT podcasts because there were like 4. Like, or like not even. Like Mandy's I listened to once in a while, but it didn't make sense for me because I'm a pediatric therapist. So why would I listen to a podcast on geriatric OT, right? But I didn't even know. I mean, I only found your podcast and Brock's Occupied podcast because I went on looking for OT podcasts because I was thinking of starting the podcast, right? So then I started listening to you guys and I found Mandy's the same way, but I hadn't looked for OT podcasts before. And OT Schoolhouse, that's the other. Those are the 4 that I know, the big ones that I know of.
Well,
so I hadn't listened
I don't know if I'm big, but thank you.
Well, you're on there. You're big.
All right.
You've done more than 3 episodes, so you're big in my mind. But here's the thing. So I didn't know any of you, right? I didn't reach out to you. And I interviewed Mandy. I'm on your podcast now. I've talked with Brock on his podcast. I haven't talked with Jason Davies yet, but he strikes me as a very genuine and super awesome person in the world.
Fantastic. He's amazing.
Like the host of the OT Schoolhouse podcast. So anyone out there that's listening, you should start an OT podcast so you can know these people because they're all just fabulous people. I feel like I have a little group of people now that understand sort of what I'm trying to do, and that all of you have been super supportive of me starting the podcast. And I didn't even know you. It just has made me love our profession even more and reminded me how great OTs are, that they're just a super engaged and welcoming and loving group of people. And I feel such a sense of camaraderie with you guys, even though we've never met in person, but we're just kind of putting information out there in the OT world. So there's room for a lot more OT people doing podcasts, and you should think about it, because then you can know all these great people. That's my little plug for how nice you guys have been to me, because I don't know what I'm doing.
But none of us do. Some of us might know a certain realm a little bit better than others.
Right.
But when I started, I mean, not even when I started, now I still am figuring it out as I go and improving and putting it out there and then learning from my mistakes and building upon it. Literally starting this podcast is exactly how I went about starting my business. I had no idea what I was getting myself into.
Yes.
I had a view, I had a vision of where I wanted to be, and then just started doing, and it evolved and it changed, and I went through some hardships and I had to overcome that, and that's just how it is. But
yes.
the OT podcasting community is absolutely amazing. Oh my goodness, I'm at a loss for words, because everybody has been so fantastic. And I think it's one of those things, at least for me, and I'm sure you probably feel the same way, there's almost this layer of immediate understanding between all of us.
Yes.
Because we put out an episode, or we put out a handful of episodes, or hundreds. I don't know how many Mandy's released at this point, but every time I find another OT that's come out and put out a podcast, I'm I start following them right away. I start listening right away, and I get really excited about it, because I love OT and I love podcasts, and I love just kind of supporting the profession and just using it as that platform to get knowledge across to everybody. Mm-hmm. And not everyone's going to like my show, but they might listen to your show and love your show, or they might listen to Jason's show and love his show. Doesn't mean they have to like all three of us.
Right.
I personally love everybody.
I love all of them. Yeah.
I know, I do. And regardless, I'm not a school OT. I listen to Jason's podcast and I get a lot of information out of it. I don't work in geriatrics. I listen to Mandy's podcast and I get a lot out of it. And so it doesn't necessarily have to even be in your wheelhouse to get information from it. And I think one of the reasons that I was so excited when your podcast came out was because originally, even before I started my show and before I got into OT podcasts, I was listening to PT podcasts. And I had jumped on the podcast train through PT, but specifically PT Entrepreneur podcasts. And specifically the PT Entrepreneur podcast with Dr. Danny Mattei. And
I don't even know that one. I love Jared Carter.
Okay.
Jared Carter's my favorite.
Yes.
His is, oh my gosh, the cash-based practice. Fabulous. He is just the most humble. Mm-hmm. He puts out fabulous, high-quality content. He did one episode a month for a couple of years, and now has started producing more because he's moving more into his online practice. But I just need to give him a plug because I love his podcast, and I feel like he's one of the only PT podcasts that isn't super salesy and markety to me. That is not my vibe. Just this rah-rah sis-boom-bah. It's not my vibe. I have a really hard time with winner-take-all mentality, kind of just that is the vibe of some of those. And I'm not naming any names. I don't want to badmouth anyone, but do you know what I mean? It's there's some entrepreneurial content that is very it's winner take all, go for, get it, it just, I want us to set goals, but ultimately, I think it's exactly what Mandy said when I interviewed her on my podcast. It is ultimately about serving people, and it is okay to make money when you serve people. I want people to be financially successful, but some of that salesy marketing stuff just rubs me the wrong way when people are doing it in a way that doesn't seem really authentic. It seems really salesy, and I don't know. Sorry, that's
they lose
bummer.
They lose that human aspect, and the reason that we get into this in to begin with. But so I've listened to his podcast before, but you are definitely going to have to check out the PT Entrepreneur podcast. It's fantastic. I still listen to it and I love it. And
oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, get so much value out of it. So when you started yours, I was like, yes, like,
yeah.
This is it.
Well, that's one of the reasons is I felt like there's speech therapists and there's PTs doing podcasts on this, but OTs have a seat at this table too. And I think we need to be generating our own content. And that's why I'm really like, I struggle because in some ways the client, like when you're thinking about, this is a business related topic, when you're thinking about starting a business endeavor, you really want to know that your client base is broad enough, right? So you want a niche, right, to stand out from the rest of the people, but you also have to know that you have enough customers to make a business viable. Now, it's not necessarily that I thought the podcast was going to be generating income for me, but it is a way, because I do business coaching, and it is a way, and we're going to, we're starting to offer training for therapists and nature-based therapy. And so it is a way to kind of extend my reach as far as like establishing and sharing what I've learned as a business owner. And so it does kind of funnel money. It is like a business building mechanism for me to do the podcast, even though it is intended to help people, right? So it's interesting. Anyway, we were talking about, there's PTs that are doing podcasts, but not OTs. And that is totally,
business.
That was part of the emphasis. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's so funny that you say that, because I'm like, well, I'm glad I didn't name the podcast OT Entrepreneur, because I wouldn't have known, and that would have looked really bad, because evidently there's
I would have been like, do it. Yeah.
I know, but it would look so much like him. And I'm like, I don't even know that podcast, because there's another podcast called Mind Your Business or something. And this is like a super famous guy. And I wasn't even looking. I didn't even look to see. And so I was talking to Melissa Lapointe, and she's like, well, James Wedmore, his podcast, it's the Mind Your Business podcast. I'm like, no, I actually didn't know about it. And then I was like, oh no, does everybody think I like tried to like pilfer his name? But I didn't. I just liked Mind Your OT Business because it had OT in the title. Yep. And it was like about teaching us as OTs to run our businesses. Yeah. So anyway, but and I also I'm really big. I love acronyms in business. And so I really like the acronym for it spells My OT Business, MYOT. So I've been abbreviating on Instagram MYOT Biz, because it's just too long of a name to type out when you're using two thumbs on a phone. And so, yeah,
I love it.
It's kind of fun. It's MYOT Business when it's acronymed, but
that makes it even better.
Yeah, totally.
I love that. All right. Okay. I have so many questions for you. I want to know, what was the hardest part for you in starting your own business?
All of the stupid legal stuff you have to do. It is such a pain. I still hate it. I still hate taxes. I still hate all the documents I have to file every year for the corporation. I hate all the dumb paperwork stuff that you have to do. And that is not my forte. As a business coach, I'm not good at that stuff. I'm really clear with people when I'm going to work with them that there's certain things that I don't feel like I'm an expert in, and that's fine. You shouldn't be taking people's money if you don't think you can help them, But same way in coaching as it is in therapy to be ethical. But I hate that legally technical stuff. It's just not fun to me. HIPAA, I hate it all. But you have to do it. It's part of running a business, right? It's learning those things and getting resources or getting the professional support you need to do those things is necessary when you run a business. So yeah, that's the worst thing I don't like.
Which I think is interesting because I've listened to the episodes that you've put out so far. And I know that you've mentioned that you did a lot of that learning about the legal side yourself and reading books and kind of educating yourself on it. And so I think that's actually kind of an interesting thing because you just said that you don't like it.
Well, it's when you're starting out, you have to assess your own tolerance for risk too. There are some people who just don't, they really don't want to take a risk. I have a very high risk tolerance. I just don't worry about, it's maybe a bad thing. Maybe I'm on this bad side of it. I don't know, on a spectrum or whatever, but I feel like if there is a book that will tell me what to do and I can pretty much understand what to do, then it's more important to me to save the $5,000 than to pay someone to do it. Now, the weird thing is that I said on a recent episode, I spent a lot of money on my logo and website. But
I'm so glad you're bringing this up because these were 2 points that I really wanted to talk to you about.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's and I know that people were thinking that. I was like, people are going to think, well, why wouldn't she spend money on the legal stuff, but she'd spend money on the branding, right? Because to me, that's what gets you clients. That's the bottom line, But I do think it was stupid to do. In retrospect, I'm the business had I don't know. I don't even remember right now at this point. Maybe the business had 25 grand in the bank account. Okay. And I was like, yes, I think it's super smart to spend like almost half of what's in the bank account to make the website like totally beautiful. But it was this perception I had in my mind that to offer, and again, I have no idea, like maybe the website has been very critical in my business's success. And you can't know that. I mean, literally, there's no way for me to really know the return on investment of the thousands of dollars I invested in that logo and that website. The logo, probably not. The logo, I think, is probably not important. The website being designed well in a way that people can click through easily, that's beautiful and engaging. And like a lot of the copy I wrote myself. I didn't hire someone to do that, but they helped me think through like how people go through websites and what needs to be included and things like that. But I can't know how important that is because I live in an area that is very like, super high cost of living. And there's a lot of people here who are tech savvy. And so maybe it is important that my business has a super professional look to it and playful. And like the designers helped me think through all of the feel of the website, almost more than like the actual technicality of it. They helped me think through what is the feel that I want people to feel when they come to the website that is congruent with the brand that we have as being like an upscale service, but very playful and hopeful. And those are kind of hard to capture sometimes because you're either too playful and you look like cheesy or you're juvenile, or you're too like clinical and you look like not playful. So yeah, in retrospect, I think I could have gotten the same quality of maybe, who knows, again, you have no idea, but I could have gotten a similar feel for probably half the money or maybe even less. And I just think I should share it with everyone to say, like, you don't have to pay as much as I did to have a really nice website. But at that point, so here's maybe the reasoning behind it. So initially when I set up the business and I did the setup of the corporation myself, i.e. didn't pay a lawyer $5,000, which is what they wanted to charge me to do the 20 steps or something that are in the Nolo Press book that I followed. I had time because I was starting the business. I wasn't seeing kids. I was seeing like kids privately just through a sole proprietor thing. But I had time to go through those steps and set it up. Now, by the time I did the nice website, I was upgrading because I had hired 3 employees and I was managing them and I was managing teaching and I was managing all this other stuff. I didn't have time at that point to like learn how to design my own website, even through Squarespace, which I highly recommend. I love Squarespace. I don't know anything about WordPress, so I can't recommend it, but lots of people love it. I don't have time. but so for me, like maybe it was, I mean, this is helpful for me to talk through too, because maybe that sort of justifies why I spent more money on that at that time in the business, because your time is money. It's like, if you don't have time to design your website, then you got to pay someone to do it. And usually you get what you pay for. That's what I've learned lately. So yeah. And I think on things that I feel as though I understand them, I am game to do the work. But I think I said this in one of my podcast episodes. I did pay a lawyer to like look over things and like help me with one little thing that I just could not understand, no matter how many times I read it and looked online and all of that. But generally, I feel like personally in business setup, I almost feel like an accountant is more important than a lawyer. Unless you need a lawyer if you're setting up like a partnership, or if you're setting up some really complex corporation with like shareholders besides yourself, then yeah, get a lawyer and don't come to me for consult because I don't know anything about that stuff. But I just think you need to know yourself as a person and what you're confident in and what you feel like you can do with the supports available to you. But at some point it does become not worth your time if you're spending so many hours doing it. I got advice right away to get a bookkeeper first thing. And that's what I did. And she was great for a few years, and I use someone else now, but she was, for the woman I used initially, was very helpful in helping me sleep at night, knowing that the IRS was not going to come after me. So it's not that I didn't use any expertise when I first started. It's more like I just felt like it's not that hard to set up a corporation. It's really not, if you follow really clear steps outlined for you by the government. Nolo Press books, I mean, they're the best, really. They lay things out like so step by step, and they're so easy to use. I did it when I first hired employees. That was a whole other thing. I got the Nolo Press book and just sort of figured out with California laws what I need to do to hire employees. And it's all like, you do what you need to do when you need to do it when you run a business. And so I think, you said something earlier about like when I started, I didn't know what I was getting into. I was just kind of doing, the first thing and then the next thing. And I think nobody would start a business if they knew what they were getting into, because you can't.
Good point.
You can't manage that kind of anxiety, right? Like there's just too much that you don't know, but you do what's the next thing in front of you, and you learn when needed, right? So I didn't know how to hire an employee until I hired a couple of employees, so that's when you learn how to do it. But you don't need to learn that stuff really early. You got to figure out how to make your business financially sustainable. That's important.
I think so. I hear what you're saying, and I agree to a point. But I also feel like when I talk to other OTs that want to start a business, one of my first pieces of advice is actually talk to an attorney. And I say that because most OTs, and I fell into this category, don't know anything about the legal side. And I didn't have, at the time, I didn't have the time to really invest into doing it because I was working as a contractor, so I was still like managing my caseload. I didn't have the time to focus on that because I was doing all this other stuff for the business. But I knew that the legal side was super important. And so for me, I felt like it was beneficial to spend the money to go through a lawyer, which originally I tried to set it up through LegalZoom because that's what some of my non-OT business friends had told me to do. And I ran into this little snafu because of the state of California and setting up a legal entity. And that's when I'm like, wait, I don't know what to do. And so I got a recommendation for a local attorney, and I went there. The nice part about the attorney that I went through, she offered a free consult. So I was able to just go and talk. I didn't have to sign on right away. And I'm like, I like this. Right. And for me, it was peace of mind. Yes, I was spending some money up front for the legal fees, but it was peace of mind in making sure that my company was set up and it was bulletproof because I'm working with kids. I'm going into their houses. It's in healthcare. Right. And there are all these things that I'm like, I just don't feel comfortable if I messed it up. So like, I totally understand where you're coming from. But like, for me, I'm like, I really valued getting that legal support in the beginning. And it's something that I recommend to a lot of people because unless you have family members or you have somebody who understands
somebody you can ask.
Yeah. So yeah,
I love this because there's never disagreement on podcasts. I think podcasts are so boring when there's always like, I agree. Oh, I agree. I couldn't agree more. I agree. So this will be like a good podcast for people to listen to because the thing you're learning here is that there are different ways to run businesses, and that's okay. Like I don't lose any sleep at night that my corporation is set up just how it needs to be with the government because I did everything I was supposed to do and I had the lawyer look it over. So I did some of the legwork on my own. So I guess I'm not saying don't talk to a lawyer, but there's different ways of doing things that everybody does running their business, and they can all be okay. I don't know that I would tell people to go to a lawyer and spend the money. I would say check out a Nolo Press book from the library for free first and figure out if you even want to enter this thing and be an entrepreneur. And then if you're not comfortable doing it yourself, then go to the lawyer. But some people are going to want to do it a different way. And that's totally okay. We're all abiding by the law here. We're not, we're not breaking any laws, but it is about your own tolerance for risk. And if you are going to lose sleep at night because you're not sure if it was set up right, then you should absolutely talk to a lawyer. And there are multiple right ways to run businesses, Mm-hmm. So yeah. I just think it's cool that there's different ways that we did it and that's okay. It's not like the law is black and white, right. but for the most part, sometimes it seems very gray, but yeah, it's like there's different ways of running businesses for each person and how they're going to go about kind of setting things up, I think.
I think that just ties into kind of like the individuality of you as an entrepreneur and you as a business person. Like
totally.
If you are very adverse to risk, you're going to want to dot those I's and cross those T's, and you're going to want to like spend the money to make sure that everything is set. But yes. if you can take on some of that risk and have the time to invest in reading and educating yourself on all of these other hats that once you become an entrepreneur, that you have to start paying attention to, like legal, like marketing, like branding,
finances.
and finances.
Yeah.
Like all of this stuff that as a typical treating OT, you don't deal with much.
Right.
It's a lot. So you have to figure out
it is a lot.
What you want to take on and what you can outsource or what you can kind of hire somebody else to do.
Yeah. And at first, I think a lot of us tend to do stuff on our own because we don't have, most of us don't have the money to spend to outsource all of that stuff, right? So you have to plan carefully for what you have money to do and what you don't have money to do, which is why I started with a really ugly Weebly site that I designed for several years. It was scary. I wish I could pull it up now. It doesn't exist anymore, but it would be so interesting to see it.
I feel like my website is pretty bare bones. Like it's a landing site. There's information on there, but it's not, for me, that's not my marketing. Like that is, if somebody needs to find me, I have a place on the internet. But for my company, that's not, like, fortunately, that's not a way that I get a majority of my clients. And so maybe that, like, as we're having this conversation pan out, maybe that's why I realized I didn't really need to spend the money on the website and like that aspect of it, because it wasn't as necessary. Where the legal stuff, I'm like, okay, like this is making me nervous. I want to make sure that this is locked down. So again, like it's just an individual difference between both of us. But I'm glad that we had this conversation.
Yeah. It's also, I think, about if you want to. So for me, the website, like I said, it didn't become important until I wanted to grow the business beyond myself. Because then I felt like a real responsibility to my employees and to the community around us, that I was going to be the person. I mean, we said this earlier, the idea of working on but not in your business. So when I PhD last year, it was the first year that I wasn't leading a group or multiple groups myself, but I was overseeing the business as a whole. And I saw my role as like my job with my business manager, who's in admin support. She gives me admin support. My job with her is to make sure that we're getting enough clients in the door to be able to pay my employees. I mean, really, and to support my employees really well in doing their work and giving them the resources they need and the support they need to do great work with kids. And so that shift in mentality, once I hired employees, I mean, we made the website even before that, because the year before that was when I first hired a couple of employees, I think, or maybe 2 years, 1 year. I can't remember like right now, but I felt this responsibility to have a more professional, more consistent online and social media, online on the website and social media presence, because of that commitment to my therapist to make sure they all would still have jobs and we would have enough kids coming through the door. And so to get that steady stream of kids, I think we needed to have really clear branding and a website with an integrated registration platform and all these kind of supports that we ended up adding to the business as we grew the business, right? So when you're an individual practitioner running a private practice, my guess is that your referral sources are word of mouth. Yes?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like people know you, they love you, and they tell other people about you because your capacity is like your work schedule during the week. You're not trying to fill like multiple people's schedules, right? So you don't but you have to up your marketing when you do that. I definitely feel like word of mouth is absolutely the number one way that people find services, but having that online presence where there's reviews and people can clearly find you online, it does add some social proof to the picture, and there's reviews and pictures and things people can see about your practice when you're growing. And that's not what everyone wants to do either. Yeah. I'm really big on that too. Like you have to know what your vision is for the business. What do you want your business to be ultimate? Like that 5-year, we're back to the 5-year visioning, like knowing what your 5-year vision is. I think that's a really good, because it's just far enough out that like you will have made progress, but it's not so far in the future that you're like, I have no idea what my life will be like in 10 years, so 5 years is like a good ramp up plan for planning goals. And I think that will tell you kind of what you want to invest your time in doing right now. If you see your business as like, I want to have 10 employees and a 5,000 square foot pediatric sensory integration gym. I don't know, like you can have these awesome visions then you have to approach your business differently than if you're like, I love early intervention. I don't really want to manage employees. I just want it to be me, but I want to be serving my community. And maybe I want to create an online resource hub for families that would, I don't know, whatever. There's different reasons why you would direct your marketing different ways, I think, for those two scenarios, like very different plans that you would have as far as what you want to do with your marketing. But
completely. So I'm really curious. What would you say your biggest mistake was in either setting up or the very beginning of starting your business?
So, well, there were many. I shared a lot of these on one of the podcasts, I think, but I think maybe the thing that I wish I had really done sooner was get a handle on all the finances. So this kind of goes back to the spending so much money on the website, right? Well, I had 25 grand in the bank account. It looked like, oh, I have money. I can spend 10 grand to like brand myself and brand the business and pay for a logo and pay for a pretty website and put some time and money into that piece, right? But really at the time I had an accountant, like I've said before, like I hired an accountant right away. That was some advice that I got, from someone said, get someone to do your bookkeeping, make sure you're on your book. So I had that, but just having a bookkeeper or just having an accountant does not mean that you actually know where the money's going on a daily basis. You'll know from their reports that they send you if you're losing money every month, but you may not know how to plan for a large purchase or for equipment or for things that may be coming up, like a conference you want to go to or something like that. And so until I love the book Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. So I don't do his system totally, but the general way that he says to manage your finances is how I manage them. And then I also pair that with a budgeting software called You Need a Budget. And for me, it's YNAB. I love it. For me, so I do my finances now on the 10th and the 25th of every month. And I look at everything that came into the bank account and I budget all the money into different categories within YNAB. And so once I started doing that, it was such a feeling of empowerment because I actually like looking at the money now. Like it's like, and we still don't have a lot of money. I mean, honestly, if anyone has gotten insanely rich running a therapy practice, please call me. I'd like to bring you on the podcast. But I feel like no one's in this business really to like make $1 million. But the thing is, even in the months where like for us in particular, June is the month where the income is low, but the payroll is high because we have our week of camp where I'm paying therapists for over 40 hours a week, sometimes overtime, but we don't have the new registrants coming in for the new year until July. So it's like everybody is finished paying for the school year. They've already paid for camp. So technically that money should be there. But man, if I don't manage that money well, like it's like, oh my gosh, there's a thin margin. But that system in and of itself, like using the Profit First system with YNAB has just given me such a feeling of peace about the business finances, even in the tight months, because I know where the money's going. And I don't know if people are interested in Profit First. I can talk more about like kind of what that is if you want me to, but if not, we can just leave it. But
well, I'll be honest, I haven't heard of that yet. So I literally wrote it down. I'm like, I'm going to have to check that out. But maybe like in a nutshell, like what's one of like the biggest take home points that you learned, or maybe the top 3, something like that you learned from the book?
Your business should pay you. That's what I learned in the finances now, because I get to watch this little pot of profit money grow from which I'm going to take my owner draw every quarter. So in June, I took think like $1,700 just extra. It's just a bonus for you for running the business, for taking the risk of running the business. And so his system basically, I mean, I won't go on forever, but his system basically is, in his system, he says you should set up separate bank accounts for like profit, for like your owner's pay, for your taxes, and then for your operating expenses. I don't set up the different bank accounts, which he says is a big no-no, but it has worked well for me because I'm pretty disciplined about I will not steal money from a category, you know? But I have those categories set up in YNAB as categories. And so when the income comes in, it gets split between owner's pay, taxes, profit, and your operating expenses. And you need to run your business off of the operating expenses pot of money. So anything that's an operating expense like payroll and things like that need to come out of operating expenses. You have money set aside for taxes. So when you need to pay payroll taxes or you need to pay the IRS at the end of the year, that money is already set aside so that you're not like, holy shnikes, I owe $10,000 and where is it? And then the profit, you put money in there. He has percentages in the book and a whole way you kind of transition to putting more into each category, but a pot of money sits there and you put money in it every time it's coming into the account. But the profit pot of money sits there until the end of every quarter. The owner takes half of that as a draw. You basically give it to yourself as a bonus. And so it makes running your business, you get like a present every quarter of a good chunk of money. I mean, sometimes in the early days, it was like, I don't know, $300 or something. It wasn't that much, but still, it's like, who couldn't use $300 extra dollars? And $1,700 was really helpful when we were about to go on vacation. And I had just like sort of left my job at the university and gone to adjunct. So I didn't have as much money coming in. So like, it's a really great system that I recommend to everyone. And again, I don't think you have to do, sorry, Mike, I love you, but I don't think you have to do like every single thing in his book to have it really transform how you look at your money in your business. So it's awesome.
I think this just goes right back to what we had been talking about there's a lot of resources, there's a lot of information out there, but you have to do what works for you, right? Like we have already kind of had a discussion about the importance of lawyers and where to spend the money and how much we spent on our websites and that kind of stuff. But even just in that instance, we had a difference in opinion.
Yeah.
And here, like you can read this book, you can read blogs about it, you can like dive into the podcast about business, but ultimately you have to do what works for you. And you can take little nuggets from everything that you read and you hear and people that you talk to, and then integrate it into really what works best for you as a business owner, what works best for you, for your practice, and all of that. So I love that you just said that, because you're taking the information, but then applying it to what you have and really what's going to be the best for you.
Yeah, what works for you. And Nicole, I have to give Nicole a shout out because she's the business manager she's an independent contractor at Outdoor Kids OT. So she runs her own admin business, but she helped me set up she helped me set up YNAB. She helped me set up a spreadsheet so I can just plug in however much money came in and it'll automatically calculate the percentages for each of the categories. So it is so easy to do every month. And it just helps me feel a sense of control over where all the money's going. And also helps you save. Like when you use budgeting software to manage your business finances, it helps you save for things. So YNAB has ways you can set up a goal. So for AOTA, we were just talking about that off recording offline, but for AOTA, I have a little goal set up and it just tells you every month, oh, you're behind on this goal. You need to add $119.38 to meet your goal by April, whatever. So it's really cool that it has there's a lot of automaticity built in that helps you kind of keep goals in mind, which I think is really critical for managing your money, well as like knowing what the goals are. It helps you stay motivated to put money where it needs to be. So
I feel like what you're saying is building processes and making things as efficient as possible. And right now we're talking about finances, but this applies across the board of running your practice and trying to make things as easy as possible and take out a lot of the busy work and the legwork that you have to do in order to run a successful private practice. I think specifically with finances, a lot of people, like their eyes start to glaze over when you start talking about money, you start talking about saving, investing, 401ks and all this kind of stuff. Everyone's like, whoa, like that's a lot to handle. But as a business owner and as a therapist, it's very important to understand the basics and at least spend some time up front kind of putting these processes in place, putting in a budget, putting in these goals that you're talking about. So then as the weeks go by, the months go by, the years go by, everything is just automated. And unless you change your goal, it's just going to keep leading you in that right direction.
Yeah, you are just like, oh my gosh, this is my thing I love is efficiency and systems in business. That is my favorite thing. That is what I coach people to do. The second I'm on a phone call with people, I'm like, let's look at your systems, because you should really not be doing repetitive tasks, recreating the wheel over and over in your business. You should have really clear systems in place where you can just go to that checklist and do it. Just follow the steps. It should require no mental energy whatsoever. If you're doing something, the simplest thing to do is just make a checklist for that. If you're doing a process that you know you're going to have to repeat, for example, intaking a client, every business should have a system for intaking a client. Like, there should be a checklist that is just done every single time that you intake a client, and a million other things. But yeah, systems are so critical when running a business, because man, your brain will explode if you do not have systems in place for those repetitive things that you have to do over and over in a business. Oh, a book that was super helpful to me. It's Michael Port is the author, but he is just fabulous at helping people think through their systems. The specific book that was really helpful to me, you can even get it from the library probably, is called Beyond Booked Solid. His first book is Book Yourself Solid. And then the second book is called Beyond Booked Solid. And that book has a chapter in it. I don't know that I'd recommend the whole thing, but there's a chapter in that book about systems. And I still remember when I read that chapter, and all of a sudden I just got out paper and I started drawing like parent calls and then an arrow. Laura talks to parent for almost an hour, draw another arrow. You know, like looking at how much a waste of time I was spending by not having good systems in place, by not putting information on the website and having a really clear way for people to walk through how to access our services. That drawing it out the way that he kind of says in the book, you should look at your systems, was so helpful to me and really helped me establish systems for almost everything in the business. It just was such like a light bulb moment. So that is, you have just like preached to the choir, girl. I am so, you're saying it and I was like, don't interrupt. Oh my gosh, this is exactly what I love to talk about, because it's just so important for any business. Even if you're an independent sole proprietor, you're just running your own practice. There's so much to manage as a business owner, even if you don't have employees. And to run a really successful business, you've got to have those systems. It's great.
Well, and I want to just generalize that just to therapists as well. Like, you don't even have to be a business owner. Have systems in place. We all are lacking in time. We all have more on our plate than we know what to do with. And we want to do all these things, but we just don't have the time because of productivity, because of personal stuff that you have to do in your life. I think for me, like, as you were talking, I was sitting there and I'm like, the importance of systems and efficiency is something that I wish I knew before I started my business, because it took me getting into the weeds to realize I need to stop doing this thing that I've done a million times and put a system in place that takes care of that. And it did. It took me a couple years to really kind of fine tune things. And now I'll do something once and I'm like, that is something that I need to put in a system. I need to make that as efficient as possible. And so I love that you went into it knowing like, this has to be very efficient. But for me, it took some time to learn that skill. And it took me really kind of getting to the point of, I don't have time to be doing this anymore. How can I make it easier for me to really see this is what I needed? Right.
It can be, it's true, because you get to where your brain is on complete overload, but it can be as simple. Have you read the Checklist Manifesto?
Mm-mm. So many good resources.
Is like, it's a really good, I think that's the name of it. Now I'm like doubting myself that I said that. I think it's by Atul Gawande. I don't know how to say his last name, but he's a surgeon, I think. And basically he changed the infection rate in hospitals by implementing a simple checklist before the surgery procedures. And he ended up writing a book about how checklists help our brain offload the thinking that needs to be done when we implement a system. So rather than having to process what needs to be done next, I mean, I'm sure you have a checklist for podcast production, because I would constantly forget a tiny little step. Like, one of the things I do in the podcast is I change the ending of the URL for the page where the podcast is going to be hosted on my webpage, because it ends up, it normally will just auto load with some really long name of whatever the title is. And I want to change it to just 9, like whatever the episode is. I would forget that. That is on my checklist, because I would totally forget to do that, because who's going to remember? You have to click into some random tab in Squarespace and find where it is and then delete the part. I just wouldn't remember that. So when I started doing that on the first time I did it, I put it on the checklist for when I produce a podcast episode, what needs to be done after I record. And so it just offloads cognitive energy and can really, I mean, as this doctor showed, can really save people's lives in some situations, if it's a life or death situation. But you're right about like therapists in general, we need to be efficient just because of the demands that are put on our time. Especially, I remember when I was in school-based practice. I mean, I needed checklists to just remind me everything that needed to be done in sequence when I get a referral. Because you can easily forget, like, dang it, I didn't pick up that form from that teacher and I'm not going to be back at that school for 5 more days, which means I won't be able to write the report until I get it. And maybe I need to email her and then she's going to have to scan it and send it to me. And, it's all those little things can really help you just live life with a little more ease if you have some system in place to manage it.
Yeah, I think.
My favorite.
Yeah, exactly.
I love systems.
I feel like we have, as therapists, as business owners, we have so much to think about, and we have so much that actually requires thought, purposeful mental thought.
Creativity. We have to be creative, right?
Yeah. Compassion, empathy, like all these things that we need to attend to. And then there's so many things that we also have to attend to, but they shouldn't take much mental capacity to get done. And so I always I like what you were saying, like offloading the thinking. I always think about it as I try to take out the mental component for things that don't need it. So then I can utilize my mental capacity for my clients, for my employee, for the people that need that, and not these stupid, like remembering where to put this number in this box or, what form to grab and that kind of stuff. Like that doesn't need mental thought behind it. You have to get it done, but it's so easy to just put a system in place and then just go with it, rather than like, oh, did I get that? Do I have everything? Oh, and then it adds to the stress. And
I would say I thought of something while you were talking too, that I would say for every business owner that's going to grow their business, if you have a vision beyond your business being just yourself as a sole proprietor. So I'm not talking about that. But if you have a vision to have employees or to grow your business to offer multiple services or multiple products, then you really will get to a point where your brain cannot handle working in the business and on the business. And I know that's a thing that's like very trendy in work on your business, not in your business. But if you haven't heard that concept because you don't listen to 100 business podcasts a week, like I like to,
and me,
it's about, it's about like working on your business, like the marketing, the big picture, the strategy, rather than providing the direct service in your business. The thing is, at some point you get to where you can't manage both of those things, and you're going to have to pull back from providing the service. I think this is really important for people to know if they're going to grow a business. You might not always be the OT that the business is centered around. So it's important to think about, from an early standpoint, talking in terms of we, us, not me, Laura, Park Figueroa, I am the expert OT that everyone wants to see. Nope, it's a model. It's a intervention that we use as a group here at Outdoor Kids OT. We use this model. We want to support your child. We offer outdoor services, whatever the thing is, rather than it being centered all around you as the expert therapist. Now, your face is always going to be the face of the business. I mean, I still talk to parents and do intake calls and things like that. But there definitely became a point for me where I was like, I can't. It was when I started my PhD. I was like, I can't be doing a couple of PhD classes and teaching and seeing kids outdoors and running the practice. Like I can't do that. And the one thing that needed to go was me running the groups outdoors. And I felt a lot of guilt about it. Sometimes I feel like, do my therapists think that I'm lazy because I'm not, but really everything I do is for them to be supported and for their job to be easy. And I hope that they feel like I listen to them when they tell me things that need to be changed in our systems or processes. Because the best ideas for changing systems comes from the people that are actually implementing the system. So I try to check in with them pretty regularly about what do we need to tweak here? What do we need to change? What would make intake easier for you guys? What would make our documentation system better? So we talk about those things and then make the changes based on what they say. Yeah, you definitely get to a point where your brain can, no matter how many checklists you have, your brain cannot be doing the creative. I found it so hard to do the creative work. I would get to start planning a session for the kids outdoors. And normally that would be so fun for me. And I would just be like, oh, what to do this week? I just can't even think. I had no creative energy because I was spending so much time creative energy thinking about the business as a whole, and there was no creative energy for the kids who are the people that matter the most that we're supposed to be serving, So it's important to think about where you're spending your time as a business owner and where you're spending that cognitive energy to really help your business grow, I think.
I'm really glad that you brought that up because I think for most people that start a business that at least have the mindset that they are going to grow, and that's not everybody. Some people are going to just set up like the sole props and they're going to rock it and they're going to do really well. But for the people that have a vision that at some point they might want to grow, we all hit this like precipice of here I am doing my work, just me. Now I want to grow my business. Okay, you hire your first employee or your first couple employees, and then all of a sudden it's like chaos. Because yes, you have your systems in place, you have your caseload, you have your employees' caseload and mentoring them and all of that you have to be doing. And then you realize, whoa, like I am overloaded at this moment. And I know I went through it. And you said the word guilty. I felt the same way. When I initially decided to cut back on my treating caseload, I felt guilty because I was like, I need to be seeing as many clients as my employee. Like, what's going on here? And it really took me a while to come to that understanding of I need to spend time and going back to that mental capacity, that mental energy in guiding the business and to keep the business moving forward. And if I'm spending all of my time and energy with the clients, I'm not going to have anything left over for the business. But it's a very hard moment. It's a very hard experience to go through because you're so used to doing your job how you've been doing it. And then all of a sudden you have to switch. And for me, it took me a while. But I'm glad that I got there, and I'm glad that I kind of went through that because then I understand the importance of having that time to work on the business and not just be grinding away doing the actual like clinical direct patient care.
Absolutely. I had another thought. I totally think that if people want to be sole proprietors, they should be. But I also think that they should be aware, if that's their thinking, that you will always be trading your time for money in that model, right? So I still remember when I had a moment where I was like, wait a second. There's people in the woods right now with kids, seeing kids for therapy, like as part of my bit, but I'm not there. Like, that's so weird, And so in a sense, like to think about as you get older, our jobs, I mean, I'm thinking in pediatrics really, but even in adults, you're doing transfers, you're moving people, like there's a lot of tax on your body. And I think that in this day and age, when we have the connections through technology that we do, I would just really encourage any OT that is working in their own business to think about long-term, like long-term, do you want to be a sole proprietor? And maybe you do want to stay a sole proprietor, but maybe you want to transition into doing some online courses or some telehealth or there's tons of stuff that you can selling an ebook, whatever it might be, so that you're not always trading your time for money. Because for me right now, I'm not seeing kids in the practice. I'm spending time I'm really at home. I mean, I work at my kitchen table because my house is small. I'm like, everyone get out. I need to work. But I definitely don't feel like it's as taxing on my time to be working from home as it is to actually get all my stuff together, go out to see clients, come back, do the notes, it's more I'm in charge of my own schedule. And for me, that was really important. Like no one's telling me that I have to go to this place at this time right now because I'm in charge of when I'm working. So if I want to work at my kitchen table, I can. If I want to work in a coffee shop, I can, because you can do that systematic, strategic marketing, business thinking in any place that you're sitting, so
any place you can focus.
Yeah. Sometimes I walk when I think walking is really good for creativity.
Yes. But it's hard to write things down when you're walking. That's my issue, is that I'll try to jot it down and then I'll get home and be like, wait a second, what was I just thinking?
I bring my phone and I dictate. So like I'll bring when I first started Outdoor Kids OT like 4 or 5 years ago, I had a week where I was like, I do not know what I am going to do today. And it was like 3 hours before the group. And I had like looked through a couple of books I have about outdoor activities. Like nothing sounded good to me. I couldn't like get my thoughts together for like the goals that the kids I was seeing had and what would actually be helpful for them to meet those goals. And I went on a really long walk and I came up with like 10 ideas because I just walked fast. And I just cleared my brain and I just like would dictate into my phone, you know, like whenever I had an idea. And it worked really well for like generating. I think sometimes just getting out of your typical space helps your brain think differently. So I like always go outside for a walk if I'm feeling stuck or just get out there and move. That's my go-to.
Yeah. I feel like my best ideas, I'm either walking or I'm in the shower. And I'm always like, why am I getting this idea now? Like, especially in the shower. Like, I mean, I guess I could like reach out and like, write it down, but it never happens that way. And I'm always like, and then I get out and I'm like, oh, I had an idea and I lost it.
Or when you're falling asleep at night, that's when I get them. Like I'm almost asleep and then I'm like, oh, that's what I should do for the whatever, you know, like there's neuroscience behind it. I mean, in my neuroscience class that I just took, I was like, oh my gosh, that's why I get ideas when I fall asleep because there's something I can't even remember right now. I'm not going to try to sound that smart, but it was something about like your brain, like the thinking parts of your brain essentially shut down when you're falling asleep. And then those creative parts of your brain are able to kind of like bubble, those ideas kind of bubble up. And it's the same in occupational adaptation theory where they have this is the only OT theory I know that actually has a framework for thinking about this concept, that they have this idea of primary and secondary energy. So when you're learning something new, you're using a lot of primary energy, like your cognitive thinking, right? And it's hard. It hurts almost. Like you have to really, it's a muscle that you're using and you're really trying hard at it. Yes. And at some point, this totally ties into what we've been talking about, because at some point your brain kind of gets overloaded and it gets tired. You can't think anymore about whatever it is that you're trying to solve, the problem or some issue you may have in the business, whatever. And so when you actually stop using that primary energy and you go do something else, you do your laundry or you go out for a walk, you walk your dog, you make dinner or whatever, take a shower, all of a sudden the ideal will come to you because those creative parts of your brain are able to you can access them. You know, you're not kind of shutting them down by thinking so hard. And that's secondary energy. So it's a big concept in OA theory that we want, you know, that's a concept to use with our clients and to be aware of when people are going through changes and we're intervening with OT services for them, is to think about those concepts of primary and secondary energy. And I don't know of any other OT theory that has that type of really clear description of something that I see happen a lot in my daily life and in everybody else's daily life when they're just going about occupational tasks. So it's really cool. I love the theory. It's so complex. Took me like 3/4 of a full semester to understand it, but it was a really great class. So I'm kind of obsessed with it now. Not related to business, sort of. I mean, maybe it's related to business in some way, but yeah, I could go on and on. I love it. I think it describes what we do as OTs.
I think like over the years, this is just kind of like the conclusion that I've drawn, is that starting a business has really impacted so many other areas of my life that I didn't actually think that it was going to impact. And that you have to have a good handle on a lot of things in order to be able to take the leap to start a business, then go through the struggles. I mean, the struggles of getting it off the ground and then expanding and growing and, yada, yada. Like the rest is history there. And it's amazing because I listen to a lot of podcasts. I want to read more books. I just haven't had time. But I do a lot of like mindset type stuff. And it's kind of what you were just talking about, like how we think, how we learn, how we process our energy, how we approach things. There are so many things that even though it's not directly tied to business, it all can influence how you are as a business owner and how you conduct yourself. And it's been amazing to really realize all these little things that like I kind of really needed to like get my ducks in a row there to make me be able to be the person that I am as a business owner, as a therapist. And
yes, it will. I mean, I don't know that. I guess maybe some people are like born entrepreneurs or whatever. We've come full circle because that was the first question you asked me, I think, a while back. But I definitely think it changes you as a person. I don't know that I ever would have been like, I am a school-based OT. Like, that's who I am, but I mean, I was for many, many years of my career, I was a school-based OT, but I don't know that I identified with that identity as much as I identify with being an entrepreneur, because it fits, like it just has become, it's like a lifestyle almost, more than my previous kind of jobs have been. And I think part of that is just because I really can't see myself working full-time for anyone else ever again. I just can't. I'm afraid I actually offended a friend because I posted something on Instagram about, because along those lines of it being kind of your identity and who you are as an entrepreneur, it becomes all encompassing. It's very easy to overwork and just have everything be about what you're doing for work, because we enjoy it so much. But I posted this thing on Instagram the other day because I was out. I had to take my son to the orthodontist, and he always wants to go to get a bagel on the way home. He calls it Noah's. So, Noah's New York Bagels, NY Bagels. One time we were driving by, he's like, Can we go to Noah's Nye Bagels? I'm like, Noah's what? He's like, Noah's Nye Bagels. And I'm like, what? So now it's Noah's Nye Bagels in our family. Can we go to Noah's Nye Bagels? So we went, and I was like sitting there with him, and this was just a few days ago, and it's summer and I have a lot to do. And I just was sitting there, and he was so cute and so happy eating his little bagel. And I was just like sitting there going, okay, come on, finish eating. I got to go home. I have so much to do. And like at that split moment, I had the same thought of like, it's the middle of summer and I am getting to sit here with him in Noah's Nye Bagels for 20 minutes while he eats a bagel, happy as a clam. And I get to sit here with him and like be present with him. And if I had a job where I had to go to work every day during the summer, he would be in a camp all day, which is fine. Kids go to camp, they're happy. But just in this moment, I was like very thankful that as an entrepreneur, I have the flexibility in my schedule to take him to the orthodontist, stop for a bagel, and then go home and continue working. And so for a moment, I just was so thankful. And so I posted on Instagram. Well, one of my friends who works for a large tech company, she was like, not all 9-to-5 jobs lack flexibility. I can go with my kids to field trips. I can go to so I was afraid I offended her. And the thing is, like, you gotta be confident about your choices. I'm like, more power to you. If you want to work at a 9-to-5, that's fine. But don't get mad at me that I was happy that I could eat a bagel with my kid in the middle of the day of the summer,
Yeah, right.
So I think that's the beautiful thing I think about being an entrepreneur is you can really craft your life to how you want to live your life. Now, it does become all encompassing and you do work much more probably, but it's like in the interest of your own mission, your own values, your own thing that you are working towards. And so it feels different to me than working your booty off for a hospital or a school district or for an organization that is honestly never really going to value you for what you offer them. I feel I worked in schools for so long and I was a very good OT. I know that. I'm not trying to like pat myself on the back, but I got no feedback except from the direct people I worked with, but no feedback from my supervisor about you're doing a great job or thank you so much for the extra work you've done at such and such school. It just was a thankless job. And I feel like as an entrepreneur, there's more of a sense, for me at least, of value and meaning and benefit from my work than there was working in that system where I didn't have a performance review in 10 years while I worked there, So I don't know.
Yep.
It's maybe just my experience, but that was my experience. And I think that's why I love being an entrepreneur, because it feels like what I was always hoping work would be like. And it has its challenges too, but anyway.
So much yes to everything, like everything that you just said right there. The entire time I'm nodding my head. And I was like very ferociously nodding my head like, yes, yes, yes. I totally get it. The flexibility piece is, at least for me, one of the biggest things about being an entrepreneur is that I have the flexibility to do what I want and to shape my business how I want, to go and volunteer, which is a big thing that I do. And I take weeks off at a time that I can go and do volunteer work, and I can go get trainings and anything that I want. And I don't have to go to the head of director of rehab and be like, hey, can I go get trained in this, which has nothing to do with anything that I've been doing. I'm just interested in it. And I have that flexibility. So yes, oh my goodness, yes to the flexibility piece and just everything that you said right there, because it becomes your identity. It becomes who you are. And I don't think, like going back to the very beginning of the conversation, I don't think that I had the mindset of an entrepreneur very early on. But now it's like I live and I breathe it every single day. And I love talking to people that also do that too.
I have to control myself because at parties and stuff, I just want to talk about business. I'm like, oh, you run a business? What do you do? What do you do? Do you know about Meet Edgar? Do you use this? Do you use that? I'm like totally, I just want to talk to people. It's so funny. And so I have to kind of like rein it in a little because I don't know that all people want to talk about work at a party on the weekend, but...
Well, I think this is a good transition into giving you a little bit of time. I know we've been talking about your business throughout. We've been talking about your podcast throughout, but I want to give you a little bit of time to share anything else that you have going on with your business. And if you have anything kind of fun that's in the works or anything like that you want to share.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm like, which business? Wait, which one am I talking about? Yeah. So if people are interested in outdoor practice, they can see Outdoor Kids OT at outdoorkidsot.com, and kind of merging the business piece of my brain and the nature-based practice piece of my brain. This fall, we're going to be offering a training called Therapy in the Great Outdoors. And it's November 2nd to the 5th in a few short months. It is coming quickly. And we're going to be sharing at that retreat, we're going to be sharing the Contigo approach. It stands for Connection and Transformation in the Great Outdoors. Contigo means with you in Spanish, which is very cute too. My husband kind of laughed at the idea when I told him, but now it's sort of like a cute thing that we all love about the word Contigo, that it's like the name of our approach and it means with you. So we're with families and supporting their kids outdoors.
Love it.
So yeah. So the Contigo approach, we've been developing it over the past few years, and I was planning to do a retreat next summer in 2020. And there was so much interest that I was like, I think we need to do this sooner. And I think it's ready. I just need to put myself out there and do it. So it's a little scary. We've talked about that on this interview about taking risks as a business owner. And so it was a little scary to mail a couple $1,000 check when I didn't know if anyone would register for this. But we have lots of people registered now. I think we have 5 spots left. So anyway, we're going to be teaching people the Contigo approach that we've developed, and then also doing some like practical outdoor skills, like learning how to use knives with kids, learning how to build forts, how to hang tree swings and different activities to do with swings, maybe some nature crafts too. I'm wishing I had made it like 7 days long because I have so much that I would like to do. But yeah, so there'll be a lot of practical stuff and then kind of just the theoretical base and the framework for helping people think about how to do nature-based intervention with kids. So it's not just for OTs. It obviously was designed as an OT intervention approach, but we're kind of going to share the model and allow people to use it in their own practice. So people like speech, we have a couple of speech therapists and a psychologist, a mental health counselor, and maybe a PT is going to register. So we've got a good, mostly OTs, but we've got a good mix of people. So I wanted to tell you that if there are still spots when this goes live, people can use, I'm going to make a coupon code for people that listen to this podcast. So OT for life, and it'll get you $100 off. So I'm hoping there'll still be spots left. We actually aren't limited on how many commuter spots we can take. It's just a matter of, like, if people don't want to stay on the retreat center, it's just a matter of, I haven't in my mind decided yet where I'm going to cap it if we do end up having more people that want to come, because I want to keep it small enough that it's still manageable, that it's not like a giant, right. It's not going to be like 50 people. I want it to be for sure 30 or less. I'm thinking I'll cap it around 20, 25.
Okay.
So yeah, so that's going on. So people, OT for Life, you can register for that at outdoorkidsot.com. There's a banner across the top that says register here for the outdoor conference. And then my other business is mindyourotbusiness.com. And that has the podcast that I started in March, maybe. I think I'm recording episode 11 now. So there's 10 episodes there. And I think I've decided that I'm going to try to do one interview per month. Sarah, you'll have to tell me if this is a good idea. I think I've decided I'm going to do one interview per month because the interviews are extensive to edit. And I think in the fall, I'm not going to have as much time to do 2 episodes a month, but I might do like solo episodes in between just as ideas come to me as I run my business. And the focus of that podcast is really on running a business as an OT, just a lot of things, like not just private practice. Like we've focused on private practice on this conversation because you and I both run private practices, but I really love talking to OTs that are running non-traditional businesses too, where they're making products or maybe I talked to an OT in Australia who's starting to do nature-based practice and he kind of interviewed me, we like reverse interviewed because he's getting started. And so lots of different things, not just like OT private practice. So that podcast is there. And then on that website at mindyourotbusiness.com, if people want business coaching, I also do business coaching for people that are really, I am like super good at the systems piece. If you're feeling overwhelmed and you just kind of don't know how to get yourself organized to get kind of moving in the right direction in your business. And so you can have some peace at night sleeping so that you're not thinking, oh my gosh, what about this thing? What about that thing? And those thoughts creep in as you're falling asleep. If you need that peace of mind, like that's what I'm really good at, and helping people like get started moving in the right direction to help them get organized and get systems in place to have their business organized and running efficiently. That efficiency piece is so big to me. So on the website, people can book a 15-minute, I do free 15-minute consults. Those are quick and dirty. Like I do my best to like give you a ton of valuable content in that 15 minutes, but they're 15 minutes long. So, most people then end up booking after that because you really can get more into like, what are all the nuances going on here in your business? And so, yeah, that's there for people. And I think that's it. Listen to the podcast. And if you need extra help, I'm there. I actually did just back off from teaching a little bit. So I have more time for business coaching, which I love. I get like high off of business coaching. I hang up the phone with people and I'm like, oh my gosh, I just love doing this. Like it's so fun because people really go from feeling uncertain to like, okay, I'm motivated. I'm going to do this. And we organize everything in a Trello board because I love Trello, and they can like check things off and like see the actual progress that they're making in running their business efficiently. So it's super fun. I love it. It's my favorite thing.
Okay, so total side note, but I feel the same way after I do an interview for the podcast. Like I hang up and I'm like, yeah, I can go. I'm just going to go seize the day. Like I got this. Like, and it doesn't even matter. I can be in like a total crappy mood before the interview or like low energy, tired, just like spent, exhausted. And then afterwards I'm like, yeah, I'm like totally jazzed. So I get it. I totally get that. And I feel like talk about coming full circle, because at the beginning of the episode, we were talking about everything that you have on your plate. And here you are sharing even more about the things that we mentioned, about what is actually going on with all of those. And I'm just in awe of everything that you have going on. I love everything that you're up to. When I heard about the retreat, I was like, wow, like that's amazing. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
That in itself is a lot of work. I appreciate that coupon code. Wow, I'm so honored to have had you on. But I have one more question for you. But before we get to that, so if people want to find out more about you, where can they find you on the internet?
So the best places to find me, like on social media or online. So the websites are there, but on Facebook, Outdoor Kids OT and Mind Your OT Business both have Facebook pages. So you can go there and like the pages. You can also find me on Instagram. My Instagram is Laura Park Fig. And then Outdoor Kids OT has an Instagram too. That's just Outdoor Kids OT. What else? The other thing I forgot to mention is that we didn't really touch on email marketing at all, but I have an email sequence, like an automated email sequence set up with just helpful business information for people. If you go to mindyourotbusiness.com, you can join the email list there. It's pretty obvious. It's like on the first page where you can click to join. And you get a sequence of emails. I'm not selling anything on there. I mean, in the future, if I do a course or something, I might send an email and say, hey, just FYI, this is available. But really, those emails are intended. That was my early. I started doing that maybe 18 months ago because I wanted to start sharing business content with people because I was learning so much, and it helped me to have a way to like share information with people. So if you join that email list, there's some freebies that you get when you start, like a super bill template and a entrepreneurial checklist about being an entrepreneur. But then the future emails, I actually go inside my business bank account at one point and show how that whole YNAB and Profit First system is set up. And it's a really great video because I didn't edit it out. I posted it anyway, that it actually showed like, oh, you don't have money this month for payroll. So you got to figure out where that money's coming from. So it was a really great teachable moment to use that video to say, like, this is why I use this system. Because if not, I would have had no idea. It just looks like there's $8,000 in there or whatever was in there at the time. And I would have had no idea that I really don't have the money to cover payroll. I have to find from another category to cover it, right? So yeah, there's just a lot of stuff in those emails, like managing your business receipts and just growth mindset, maybe. There's a lot of stuff in those emails that are just like helpful for running a business. So
you're like the gift that just keeps on giving. Like everything you put out is like good information, important resources.
I'm just super honest. And that's where a lot of times in business, stuff is shrouded in mystery. Like no one wants to say how much they're actually making. No one wants to say how much they actually spent making a course or building their website or whatever. No one wants to say the failures that they had in business. And I think that's what I'm trying to do is kind of like pull back the veil about like, here's how I run my business from the back. And you can criticize me. I mean, it's fine. You have to kind of have some tough skin if you're going to do that. But it's just who I am. Like the heart of who I am is that I'm really honest. And so I think I enjoy doing this because it's a space in which there's not a lot of people, I don't feel like, really pulling back the veil on their business books and showing everyone what's in the bank account, like, and I'm not ashamed of it. I'm like, I don't care. It's fine. Like, because I think if we all did that more, I think we all would probably benefit from that type of information, just sharing honestly from the heart about what's really going on rather than trying to act like we have all our stuff together.
And I think this just like ties back into like being competitive or collaborative. I think as business owners, you can have that mentality that I have to be better than everybody and everybody's out to get me, or you can learn from other people's mistakes. You can learn from their successes and their wins. I mean, I love the transparency of everything that you put out because you've gone through it.
Yeah.
Why have somebody else suffer through something where you, myself, like we've all already gone through it? Like, yes, we're all going to struggle in our own ways, but I'm speechless because I'm like, yes, this is exactly with so much about what I do, especially with my students. And I'm like, again, going back to like planting the seed with the students, I'm sharing about my business and I'm pulling the curtain back and letting them see what is going on behind the scenes because I think it's important and I think it needs to be talked about. And there is kind of this, how would you describe it? Like there's this layer that people don't want you to see about business. And I don't understand where that comes from. And I like being open and transparent about things. So I really appreciate you coming on and just being an open book about everything about your business. But now I have one more question for you. So, one word, if you only had one word to describe occupational therapy, what would it be?
Dang it. I know you asked this question to all of your guests and I'm not prepared. Oh my gosh. I have to think. Hold on. One word to describe. The word that comes to mind is limitless. That's the word that comes to mind. I feel like there are no limits to what we can do as OTs and as OT entrepreneurs, especially.
That is an amazing word, especially because of the conversation that we've had. I feel like a lot of times people put themselves in boxes. Yep. They compartmentalize. I'm just an OT. I'm just a student. I'm just this. I'm just that. And OT is limitless and OT in business, oh man. the limits are endless there. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to come and chat.
I love this. It's so fun and just so fun to get to know you too. And I have to bring you on the Mind Your OT Business podcast now. That will be upcoming.
Yeah. Yeah. Stay tuned. Hey, before you go, I just wanted to say thanks for listening to today's episode. If you want to further the discussion, go to our website, otforlife.com, and join our Facebook group. If you like us, here are 3 easy ways to let us know. 1, share our podcast with a friend, colleague, or anyone interested in occupational therapy. 2, leave us a review on iTunes or anywhere this podcast is found. 3, subscribe to us so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. Thanks again. We'll catch you next time, OT for Lifers.
Hold on a second.
Yes.
Everyone knows I'm recording in my house. It sounds like thunder, like people are jumping, running. Hold on a second. I just need to give them a little vocal reminder, as we say in OT.
Okay.
Hey, is that you? Oh, I thought it was right. Okay. I'm sorry. It's so funny.
Yeah, no, my husband's the same way. Like,
Yeah,
I have to
so
take him out, and he literally waited until I pressed, like, call you, and I'm like, get out. Like,
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah, my husband too.
There we go.
Aha.
I was like, I know it's somewhere. There's some. Sorry, alarm. Yes, because I set an alarm so that I wouldn't forget this. And I had a parent call, of course, at 1:30. I'm like, and I'm leaving to go out of town in a day, and I will not have time to call you back. And I need to call you now when I have 10 minutes. It was crazy.
It's always
Such
something.
is life. It's always something. Yes. You've made me, like, in my house, my kids think I'm famous now because I've been on 2 podcasts. You know, they're like, Mom, you're a hit. I'm like, that's debatable, but okay. If you want to think that, go ahead. I love it. I love talking to people. Podcasting is so fun because of that. But it's just so funny that they think like, oh my gosh, my mom's being interviewed on a podcast. You know, it's like this really cool thing.
Okay, all right. Let's get serious here. Okay.
Okay. Very
Not
serious.
really. I'm never serious.
I know. Being able to be really real about this, I totally lost my train of thought now.
The podcast community, the OT podcast community.
Yes. Yeah. So, gosh, I'm losing my train of thought again. We can't be recording at 3 p.m. when I'm like on a low glycemic index.
Well, and you leave for vacation tomorrow, right? So your brain's already on vacation.
My brain is totally like, oh, I make mistakes all the time. You're gonna love interviewing me.
Oh yeah.